deformed, and she had sort of bow legs. Her back knees bent in the wrong direction, which means she was very, very slow. And for 2 years or so, they looked after her, and she walked with the herd. In fact, for longer than that. I think she was 4 or 5 when she eventually died. And then one day the herd left her. And it was quite strange. We don't know why, we don't know what happened, but they eventually decided that she was clearly too much of a hindrance to the herd, and they left her behind. And she was taken by hyenas. A huge clan of about 20 hyenas killed her one day. That was very sad. Horrid. And Donna, we've just talked about a 4-year-old elephant that died, unfortunately. You want to know what the average lifespan of an elephant is? Well, in this area, probably about 60 to 65 years. I think potentially with soft food and a pampered life, you probably find that they could live up to 75 years. But you see, it's very difficult. It's a bit like tortoises. You know, it's very difficult to tell exactly how old they could get, because their lives or their lifespans are longer than the human lifespan often. And so, and obviously with something like an elephant, you can't really, it's very difficult to raise one from baby all the way to adulthood and then keep them, of course, until they die. I'm sure there are records around there of elephants in captivity in their ages, but I don't know what they are. Alright, we're going to just increase our speed slightly to get into the clearing, see what's there. While we do that, I think Stefan has probably finished carving his effigy, so I'm sure he's got something else to show you now.
Yes, I do have something else to show you. In actual fact, this, as you know, I like big trees, and we quite often visit large trees in this area. This is a caterpillar pod, and although it's lying down on its side, this is the largest caterpillar pod I've ever seen, and I have ever seen a Djuma as well. Let's just have a look at the size of this thing. Normally, these caterpillar pods are maybe 3 or 4 feet and as thick as your wrist at its thickest. This one is as thick as my thigh, and is easily, maybe 4 yards tall, 4 meters tall. Now, it's called a caterpillar pod because it gets a hairy seed pod that looks very similar to a caterpillar, and it's not really that common out here. The genus name is Ormocarpum, and on this particular Ormocarpum is a colony of ants at the moment, and I haven't quite decided what's happening with these ants. They're not moving anywhere, they're not fighting. I initially thought that there was a bit of an ant war going on over here, where one group of ants is displacing another group of ants, but that's not the case. These ants are moving up and down this tree, and I suppose the best idea would be to go to where they're going to and seeing what they're doing. This is a very old tree. The tree itself is covered in lichens, which will give you an idea of how slow growing these particular trees are, and also at how old this tree is. This tree must have been standing here for decades to get covered in these lichens. That is not part of the tree. That is a symbiotic relationship between, it's an organism that is made up of a relationship. I know it sounds a bit weird. It feels like centuries to try and understand this, but lichen is an organism, it's a plant that's made up of 2 different plants that are helping one another, a fungus and an algae. The fungus is what is taking bits and pieces of the wood and turning it into food, and the algae is taking sunlight and turning it into sugars and carbohydrates. And so the 2 basically are mutually dependent on one another. They feed one another and look after one another. They grow really slowly, but they can grow almost anywhere because of this. Lichens are well known at growing on open rock faces. Lichens grow under the snow. Lichens are what feed reindeer up right in the Arctic Circle. It's crazy. And this tree is covered in lichens, but it's also covered in these ants, and I don't quite know yet what it is. So let's go to the end of the branch here and see if we can see some of these things. I just need to wave the flies away from Wiem. There's many flies, and they're all these stable flies that are biting the beep, beep, beep out of us at the moment, making me swear quite a lot. Aaron, you've asked me what my favorite tree is that we don't see at Djuma. Aaron, without doubt, it would be one of two. It would be, the most spectacular is the baobab tree, and the other one is the camel thorn tree. The baobab tree, because they're just so majestic. They the trees, you know, I've likened the baobab tree to the massive tree, the home tree in the movie Avatar. They just seem to dominate a landscape, rising like a building out of the forest, and they're just so big, they almost defy imagination, really. And I like the baobab tree. Secondly, the camel thorn tree, because I'm really in love with the Kalahari Desert. For me, the Kalahari is, and the entire Kalahari, from the southern parts of the Kalahari all the way through to the northern parts, from the very sandy western parts through to the quite bushy parts in the east. I just love the Kalahari, and the camel thorn tree is like the marula tree here. It's just the staple tree that you see over there. And so when I see a camel thorn tree, I have these moments of nostalgia of these fantastic times I've spent in fantastic places in the desert. So those two trees, it'd be, depending on my mood of the day, probably one or the other. Right now I'd like to say that it's the baobab tree. Right, let's see what these ants are doing. Now Marco, you want to know if lichens are edible, and I suppose that's a good question considering that they grow everywhere. Marco, I don't actually know. Is an algae and a fungus edible? Yes, I mean we eat mushrooms and algae all the time. In actual fact, seaweed is forming an ever-increasing part of humans' diet across the world. So algae absolutely is part of humans' diet, and of course mushrooms are part of humans' diet. Together in the form of a lichen, I don't know of anyone eating lichens, Marco. But please feel free to do some research, or if anybody else out there knows if you can eat a lichen, and send it through to the hashtag Safari Love. I'd love to share it with everybody. It's a good question there, Marco. Nice. I mean, is it possible to eat lichens? I suppose they grow a bit too slow to be a viable food source for anything really. But I don't suppose it's impossible to think that you can eat it, considering that it's made of two things that we can digest. Right, now we've got these ants here at the terminal end of these branches. You can see them inside here. I don't know what they're doing. Normally when ants are at the terminal ends of branches like this, they are busy farming aphids. Now, an aphid is an insect that sucks plant juices, and ants farm aphids because when the ants tickle the aphids release a lovely sweet drop of honeydew. So honeydew is basically it's an exudate from an insect made up of sugary or sweet plant sap mainly, and in return for the protection that the ants provide the aphids from things like ladybirds, the ants get a tasty treat every time they tickle the aphid. So generally speaking, you'd be able to see that. So now we've got some ants at the base of these trees, and I see them at the leaf bases. So we've now got them at the leaf bases, potentially even just feeding on the plant sap from the tree. But anyway, as yet undiscovered. James, as far as I know, has reached Cheetah Plains, and I'm sure is going to be dying to give you an update on what he's going to be doing there. So see you just now.
I'm not going to show you anything just yet. We're on our way into the clearings. We went past 3 in a row pan. There were 3 impala there, which wasn't a huge sort of return for all our efforts. But we're going into the clearings now, and we'll see if we can't find something interesting there. I personally am hoping for, well, maybe a cheetah sighting. That would be very good. Possibly some buffalo, maybe a jackal or 2. And if we're very lucky, maybe quarantine or the gorgeous Incanieni. the great light of Cheetah Plains. So some people often ask us if we get lost out here, and the answer is normally no, we don't. But that's only because we have, we've driven these roads so much. And I had one of those experiences now where, because there's no sun, I became completely disorientated. I was thinking about other things and chatting about this and that, and suddenly I looked up and I realized I didn't know where I was. And I pulled out my phone app, and quite astonishingly, quite absolutely blew my mind here. I said, David, I've got disorientated, and I just assumed that that he wouldn't know where the hell we were, because, well, I mean, he's not known for his sort of, what would you say, internal GPS, David? Do you? Yes, I've never met a man who says he doesn't have good direction. And he was absolutely correct. David knew precisely where we were. I was completely confused. Let's have a look at the last of the foxgloves and Vernonia. Here's the foxglove. And the main reason I'm stopping to show you the foxglove is not so much because I want to see the foxglove, but because I wanted to just have a bit of a listen to what's going on around here. Many doves. And I must say the expectation of the morning is starting to dissipate. Everything's got rather peaceful and nice. Then, there was something else I wanted to show you of vital importance here. Oh yes, the Vernonia. These have just come up in the last sort of 2 weeks or so. And they've grown, well, they've sort of exploded out of the ground, and they are typical of a time of good water. And last year they didn't get anything like this tall. In fact, last year I'm not sure that we had any of them at all. But the year before that, in 2015, when I had just started at Wild Earth, they were about half this length. There was quite a lot of it, but they were about half the length. And you see, on a summer day like this, or in a summer like this, when you've got rain, as soon as you stop, you will start to find all sorts of different things. Here's an orb web spider. You see there, David? Sitting, waiting patiently for insects. Hopefully all of the flies that are sitting on me will go there and be eaten and devoured and subjected to torture and pain, the same way that they've done that to me. The waxbills calling, seep, 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 seep. And the sound of bees buzzing around the flowers, which is always very nice. Good. We're not too far from the clearings now. No one's been into them this morning. The Cheetah Plains guys went up to see the lions, so we will be the first. And Stef, I believe, was talking about pain thresholds when he talked about the baboons. Yes, I think they've unquestionably got a much higher pain threshold than us. But apart from that, like I was saying, if we were to try and pick those fruits, the thorns would tear our hands. We'd start bleeding all over the place. And you don't find the DRC where we live is not covered in baboon blood from where they've been torn apart by the thorns. And I watched yesterday, I watched it quite carefully, this baboon up in the tree, or it was actually standing on the roof, just above David's roof actually, and was picking the fruits, and then it would move along, and I watched its tail getting stuck in the thorns, and it just pulled, and the tail would it must have hurt. Okay, let's see what we've got here. I'm losing communications there. Say that again. I think I got spider Stef. So we're going to link to Stef. I think he's got a spider.
We do have a spider. That is a golden orb web spider, one of my favorites because it just absolutely massacres flies, in which she is doing right now. That is a female. She just collected a fly that has just flown into her web, probably one of the 400 million that are floating around Vietnam right now. And she's collecting them in the center of her web. There she goes, catching another one, another fly. See how she tugs on the web there? That's to just get a location of the fly. She bites it. She doesn't even wrap it up in any silk. That's how little she feels for flies. Now flies in their adult form a very, very important source of protein for insects. So when we start thinking about how irritating flies are, what we just got to remember is that flies form one of the staple diets of, there she goes, she's wrapping it up in silk. You can see using those back combs to wrap the fly up in a layer of silk, which keeps it immobile. And she'll then probably just hang it underneath her. There she goes. Let's see if she kicks it off. There she goes. She's hanging it up. She might even put it into her larder. Let's see what she's doing now. I think she's enjoying having us around here. She's literally collected. There's another fly in the bottom of her web. She's going to go down there now. That is incredible. There she goes. You can see that tugging. Tugging, that's just to make sure the fly, there we go. And boom, she's got another one. Oh, I'll tell you. 4 kills in as many minutes. Sam, you wanted to know if the spider is poisonous. Sam, all spiders have a venom, but not usually of medical importance to people. So while this spider is venomous, she is not venomous to people. So even if she were to bite me, and she's a very docile spider, I could probably put the spider on my hand, on my head, and it wouldn't actually make any difference. She wouldn't bite me at all. And even if she did bite me, the venom is of no consequence to humans. Might be a bit sore. She's got quite long fangs, but other than that, it won't do much. But obviously to flies and to other insects, this particular spider's venom is deadly, and will serve a few purposes. It also serves to liquidate the flies itself, and will turn them into sort of a fly milkshake, which she will then suck out and empty. And you can see above her over there in her larder, there is a lot of empty husks of dinner and lunch and breakfast that she's had before. Now, there's a lot of speculation as to why these spiders sort of build those larders. I personally like to think of it as a dual purpose function, is that it stores food, but it also acts as a visual, how do I say, a marker, so that animals that are walking through here don't necessarily walk through her web. What they don't want to do is you don't want to have animals breaking the web all the time, and she has to keep on repairing it the whole time. Now, Tim, you wanted to know what do they use the silk from with spiders. Tim, I don't think that people harvest spider silk as much as what they harvest silk from worms and things like this. Oh, you wanted to know, excuse me, Tim, you wanted to know what do spiders produce the silk from. The silk comes out of a thing called a spinneret. The spinneret is attached to a couple of glands. For the life of me, I can't remember what those glands are called right now, but let's just call them silk glands, for lack of a better word. There are 7 different types of silk glands that spiders can make. Not every spider has all 7 glands. The orb web spiders, like you're looking at right now, do those. So they have all 7 glands, and they can mix the different silks. You can imagine any number of ways when you've got 7 different types of silk that you can produce, and so they can produce a myriad of different types of silk, all for different purposes. So you'll get silk that is used to wrap up the prey. You'll get silk that is used to wrap up eggs. You'll get silk that makes that catches the insects. You get droplets of silk. You get silk used for anchor lines. You get silks for all different things, even silks that have venom in them. Can you believe? But now, you wanted to know, Lioness, if the flies are still alive while the spider is wrapping them up. I would imagine so, Lioness. The venom works. The spider's also got massive fangs, and so I would imagine that the fly is in the process of dying by the time it is being wrapped up. mainly just because it's had the intrusion of a massive fang into it, but also the injection of an overwhelming amount of venom, considerable to the size of the actual fly. There, she's just caught another one. She's going to go now, another kill. Let's go down and watch there. So tug, and there she goes to collect another fly. I think that is epic. So 5 kills in as little as... Ryan, you wanted to know if the spiders are cannibals. And Ryan, that's actually quite a good question, because quite often you hear of tales of spiders eating other spiders, in particular male spiders. Now what we have in this web is we have a male. He's a full-grown male. He's actually a beautiful male. There is the male. And you can see that he's many tens of sizes smaller than what the female is, also less colorful. And he's also on the edges of her web. And he's on the edge of the web because he doesn't want to, by mistake, instigate an attack from the female if she thinks he's a piece of food. These spiders are very primitive, or spiders are primitive, and males approaching a female living in a web need to make sure that they do not look like food. So this male will be hanging around on the edge, I have no doubt waiting for the female to come close by. He will then attach himself to her because he's so small, hopefully unnoticed. But if he does get noticed, there's every chance that she eats him. And therein lies the answer to your question. Spiders are definitely cannibals. They will eat other spiders, even spiders of their own species. But quite often it's done mistakenly. They think it's a piece of food. It's not done because they actively hunt and seek out other spiders. You do get cannibalistic spiders that specifically prey on other spiders. The jumping spiders are a very large group of spiders that is well known for eating other spiders. So I suppose yes, I'm going to say yes to your question just to end it with a statement. They are cannibals, but in this particular case, they're only cannibalistic when the male makes a mistake and he is presumed to be a piece of food. Now, that is how Mother Nature works out here. She's quite often harsh. If a male is too stupid to be able to successfully mate with a female, then he's too stupid to produce young. And so, there's another fly she's going to go and collect. It's amazing how sensitive she is. Look at that. Oh, bites it, carries it in her mouth. And let's see if she wraps it up in her larder. I think we are giving this spider a fantastic meal today. Lauren, you've noticed that the spider hangs upside down and you wanted to know why. That's... all the orb web spiders that I've ever met in my life, she almost caught that male. He almost made a mistake. He had to quickly retreat. That attack was unbelievably fast. Did you get that, Vim? So that was the male thinking that he could take a chance. He made a mistake. The female thought that he was a piece of food. She rushed up her web. I mean, that was literally, she did that in less than a second. The male knew that she was coming and made a very quick retreat up the web. Let's see if he manages to get out of the way. She's now fixing her web. She's doing a bit of maintenance on one of the support strands there. Ooh, I think that male was very, very, very lucky that he got away there. Wow. That was very interesting. I've never seen that before, a male spider make a mistake like that. But that then just goes to show, you know, they need to be so careful that they don't be seen as food. That attack that she made there was lightning quick. That was probably quicker than what a lion could charge me at out of the bush over here. He knew she was coming. He beat a hasty retreat out of the way. She even left the wrapping up of her fly to go and attack him. I'm sure she's just waiting, assessing what's going on. There's another fly in her web. She hasn't managed to feel that yet, and that's because she's on the outskirts of her web. She isn't attached to all of her communication lines. Sitting in the middle of the web, she will be sitting in the middle of her web and obviously attached to all of her communication lines, and as soon as she gets there she'll go fetch that fly. But just also in closing, just why these spiders hang upside down, I don't actually know, to be honest with you. I think it's a trait of all the orb web spiders that they do hang upside down. I haven't seen other than orb webs hang the right way around. So yeah, don't know. Good question. I'll give it some thought and see what we can do. But for now, why don't we send you across to James? We're going to stay here with the spider and see what else we can see. Or move on and show you something else when you're with us again.
Sorry, we've got a radio problem here, so unfortunately the radios are not working, but the telephones are for some reason. There is a very, very large bird indeed. It is a juvenile martial eagle. Juvenile in plumage, not in size and mass. It is vast. And it is sitting on the only exposed stump in the clearings here on Cheetah Plains. And all around us, well, the astounding chorus of the monotonous larks continues. And while you look at that bird, I am scanning the clearings for any signs of cheetah. And there is a new bird, everyone. I found one earlier and I couldn't come to you, and I'm going to go forward now. It's a white-winged widow. Now, I know that you saw a red-shouldered widow, or the fan-tailed widow bird, last week, I think it was, or 2 weeks ago with Brent. And I don't know if you've seen a white-winged widow. But there are a few of them here in the clearings, and I'm just going to sneak slowly forward. And I wonder if we can't get slightly closer to the eagle and the white-winged widow. That's him. Yeah, so apparently you haven't seen a white-winged widow yet. Well, there he is. Very similar design to the red-shouldered. Or red-collared, sorry. Red-collared widow apparently you had. That's really cool. And there's the vast martial eagle. That's magnificent. Not sure what he's looking for. It'll be something interesting. Hopefully not a cheetah. No, he wouldn't really be able to take a cheetah. It's ridiculous, isn't it, David? I might have to take a picture of him. So Skip, we see them from time to time at the dams, but because where we are there's not a great deal of permanent water, we don't see them that commonly. But yes, they are around, certainly. Yes, I need a much longer lens for that picture. Still, very beautiful. Ooh, Dave, there's a much closer white-winged widow. See on the grass there? Then Nikki, do you ever get the black-shouldered kite here? Nikki, it's possible. I haven't seen one at Djuma. See his, obviously the most obvious part of him is not his white wings, but the beautiful little patch of yellow that he has. And it is absolutely a he. So, Nikki, the black-shouldered kite's distribution does cover this area, but I've not seen one here. Oh, this is wonderful stuff. The rain always brings such fascinating birds. Now, lemon eye drops, you're wondering what the wingspan of that eagle is. Well, let's have a look at him again. I seem to remember looking this up before, and I think it's about 210 centimeters, so 2.1 meters, which is not too far shy of, well, it's about 7 feet, basically. Let me just check that up for you. And that will be, although it's a juvenile, it's not smaller than the adult. Yeah, up to 2.4 meters. Average 2.1. And there it goes with its vast wings beating. Fantastic. 2.1 meters, and you can multiply that by 3.25 if you want to get it in feet. It is roughly 7 feet. That is very long indeed. Alright, let's just move forward a little bit and see if we can't find something else in these clearings. I'd really like to see one of those red-collared widows. Maybe one will explode out of the grass for me. And I don't know if you've watched Planet Earth 2, wonderful BBC production, but there's that wonderful scene with the widow birds coming, leaping out of the grass. And if you haven't seen it, you need to do yourself a favor. It's the most astounding dance. I mean, a cheetah could hide from you here 2 feet away. It's so thick. And that thickness, of course, is not a bad thing at all. It's great. We need this water, we needed the rain, we need the thick grass so the animals can recover. Now, this is my first visit to Cheetah Plains since the proper rains. Unfortunately, I see no cheetah here. Stephen, you've sent through a question. Excuse me being on my phone while I dry. Will the martial eagle go after the widow bird? No, Stephen, it absolutely will not. Now, martial eagle actually favors much larger prey, and especially things like rock monitors and tree monitors. They find those very delicious indeed. And then, Michael, you're wondering about the blue crane and whether we find the blue crane in the Sabi sand. No, we don't find the blue crane here. It is largely a high-felt species as far as I'm aware. I'm going to check it up for you. I don't know exactly the distribution, but it's not found here. I think it's high-felt and definitely more, it'll be in wetter areas. Let's check it up. Crane. Search. Crane. Blue. Yeah. So if we look at the distribution map of the blue crane, is that any good to you at all, David? There we go. It is found there, you can see, from the Western Cape all the way up onto the high veld, but it is very much excluded from the low veld here. And I suspect that's a function of the amount of water that there is here. You can see all of the desert regions, except that it extends through the Karoo. That's interesting. I'm not sure why it wouldn't be found here then, because the Karoo is very dry. I don't know. That's a really interesting question. Locally common, endemic. Yes, it's our national bird, of course. Roosts in shallow waters at night. Mostly natural grassland, but also in wetlands, cultivated pastures and croplands. Okay, so that's what it is. It's because this is woodland. It doesn't like to live in woodland. It likes to live in grassland and much more open areas. So that's why you will not find the blue crane here. And Taylor was just saying you find it in the Eastern Cape, which of course you do, because that's where she used to work. Ooh, what's that on the road, David? It's wagging its tail. It's a pipit. Now, when identifying a pipit, it's always good to look at the eye and whether it is a tail wagger. This one most clearly is a tail wagger. And I would suspect that it's a grass-veld pipit, but let's go and have a look. I can never remember the pipits. They're deeply confusing birds. P for pipit. It's such a lovely sound, that monotonous lark, I must say. Especially when it's in a huge chorus all around you. Oh! David, did you hear that? It is a zitting cisticola, not a dwarf mongoose. Let me just find this pipit quickly. A zitting cisticola, I definitely haven't shown it before. Right, here are the pipets. And I think it was this grass-felt or African pipit here. Although, let's just see. Markings, breast white, outer tail feathers, blah, blah, blah. But one of them, very obviously, it says that it wags its tail. I mean, it would be a plain-backed or grass-felt. Yeah, I'm pretty sure it's a grass-felt pipit. Right, now I am copying you. I'm copying you. Megan? Yeah, we're going to go with the grass-felt pipit. Pretty sure that's what it was. Good. Right, let's head across to Stef. He's managed to get a flower. Taylor's in the final controls. She's not going to be playing any further part, I don't think, in this drive. So we will catch up with Stef and then you a bit later.
Just have a look at this. I know you were looking at the cisticolas with James now, and I'm sure that they would love to snack on this flower. If you have a look carefully, you'll see that what we were saying there about the flower not being a flower is in fact one of these saw-backed mantids doing a spectacular job of blending into the flower, the Wildfire flower it's sitting on. Isn't that just the most amazing thing you've ever seen? For me, that is exactly it. Now they can change color. They have got the ability to go slightly pink and also white. In this particular case, this mantid has changed the color to look almost identical to the shades of green and yellow on this Wildfire plant, and is doing that so that insects will come and land on or close to it so they can snatch out and grab them with those spined front legs of theirs. Just absolutely fantastic. And Mother Nature really is a marvel when it comes down to this type of thing. Sitting dead still, even the eyes on top of the head are conically shaped so that they can resemble spikes or florets of flowers, I would imagine. Really, really cool. Well, this morning, it was actually yesterday afternoon. Yesterday morning we were attacked by flies. This morning we are being attacked by flies. We must probably have about 60 to 100 flies each around us at the moment. It is absolutely infuriating. These flies, they're immune to swatting. The only thing that my fly swatter is doing for me at the moment is giving me peace of mind and a violent, aggressive response to these flies biting us. VM seems to think that it's because I bath too much, and that his habit of not bathing as often as I do somehow makes the flies less, but I'm not too sure. VM, what do you think?
I've got less flies than you.
Yeah, VM says he's got less flies than me, and that is case in point. You wonder, I wonder, have been wondering, do the praying mantises have competition for flowers? I mean, is a praying mantis competitive? Will he exclude other praying mantis from this same Wildfire and sort of exclusively hunt it for the day? Quite interesting to know. I don't know the answer to that question. What is interesting to know is that he's more colorful from the bottom than he is from the top. But all good. Right, we're going to send you over to Taylor. She's managed to fix all the gremlins in her car. She's out and she wants to update you on her search for the Birminghams.
We're back. Sorry about the inconvenience, but we are indeed here and rearing and ready to go. Now, I just had a little whisper in my ear that the 3 Birmingham boys have crossed from Sydney's Dam onto Vuyatela. Now, we just need to find them. So let's look hard. There's a vehicle, so we must be here. I can already see the tops of one lion's head. Let's hope that they're not sleeping. I haven't seen a male lion in such a long time. Fantastic. So I can see them here. I can see one so long. Where are the others? We shall shout to Mike and ask him where the other Birmingham boys are. Oh, there's another one. There we go. Lovely. Let's have a look over here. Now there's 1, 2. Where's number 3? Try and get a spot. So what I'm going to do is I'm actually going to go down. You can just have a look at you hiding in the bushes. Can you see him just here to the right, Craig? There's one right next to us. Let's have a look at this one right next to us on the right hand side. Here we go. Hello boy. This looks like Mfumo, I think. It's very difficult to see though, but it has a very swollen face. Or is it Tinyo? I can't tell the difference anymore. But I did see a big gash on his right eye, and I know that he had an injury. Yes, I think that this is Mfumo that we are looking at. I could be mistaken though. And I don't know which boys are here. I'm trying to see. I can see one more. Where is the third one? Let me ask Mike. Mike, where's the third Birmingham? Yeah? Yeah? Oh, okay, perfect. Thank you very much. They're just trying to work out where they all are. Let's have a quick look around here. I'm actually going to go off road very quickly, just so we can quickly get to grips as to who we are dealing with. Okay, now I see the third Birmingham. Hi boys, long time no see, gentlemen. Here we've got another one. Now, I don't know who that one is, because I can't see the face at the moment. Now, hello Vanessa. Vanessa from LA. You're wondering if it's true that brunette male lions are more dominant. Not necessarily. Not all lions carry that dark mane gene. You often see blonde male lions. I actually saw quite a few blonde male lions in Zambia. So typically the Kalahari male lions are notorious for having those dark black manes, which are beautiful. And in the animal kingdom, darker colorations is typically an indication of increased testosterone, which then, of course, that's the more testosterone you have, the more bigger and stronger you can get, of course, when you're in the animal kingdom. So that's what they say. And we see it a lot with giraffe. I think are the best ones to display as to how dominant they get when they almost go black in color. But lions, it varies slightly. The Birminghams don't particularly have the darkest manes, but they are still quite young. And I saw the same thing happen with the Charleston males, where when we first started seeing the Charleston boys, which sort of move around the southern sector of the Sabi Sand, right far south, and near the Paul Kruger Gate. And they were also quite scraggly. They reminded me a lot of the Birminghams. They were quite small. They didn't really have big manes. Their manes were quite blonde. And then, in a year and a half, they completely transformed. They muscled up. They doubled in size, not sort of just in weight. They got nice and muscly, which was good. And then their manes just started to grow, and over the tops of their shoulders, right down to the tips of their elbows. And then both of their manes went completely black. Now, they're starting to go slightly darker. I think Nsuku has got the darkest mane. And then, okay, so that I'm not sure who this one is that we're looking at, but on the left we can see there's a male lion that's now standing up. That looks like Tinyo, just from, I can see the hair missing on his shoulder, and he seems to be the Birmingham that gets plagued by mange the most, and we suspect that he was the culprit of passing mange onto the Styx pride, but he's now eating grass at the moment, and they look thin too. As he's standing there, you can sort of just see his hips starting to show now. So they do need to eat a meal. Look at that. Molly, now you're wondering when was the last time that I saw the Birmingham boys? The last time that I saw all three together, was a sighting on Arathusa we had with them one morning. We weren't able to spend much time with them, but we'd managed to find them, and that was Nana, Mfumo and Tinyo. And Tinyo is the one that we're looking at the moment. So that was Mfumo that we saw, the first lion we saw under the tree. Now we'll just have to figure out who the third one is. Sure, I can't, Molly, do you know that I actually can't even remember? It definitely a few weeks ago. It wasn't any time recently. You know what? We went out one day and we did tests during the middle of the day, just testing the signals on the vehicles, which we do quite often. And I bumped into the Birminghams, two of them. I think it was Tinyo and Mfumo at Spaghetti Junction near Chele Pan. So that was the last time, but that wasn't while we were live though. And I didn't really stay with them at all. They were fast asleep, so I let them carry on with their slumber. So I'm ecstatic to see these guys again. I'm really enjoying the Birminghams. I love the fact that they look like real male lions covered in scars. Miles, now this is a really cool question, and I've got lots of stories to tell you about this, so now you're in trouble. But Miles, you've said, has any lions ever wandered into camp? So from the stories that I've heard around camp, they have indeed been in the car park. They definitely walk past and through camp, past the game drive vehicles quite often, but I haven't seen them in where we sort of stay, thank goodness, because the way that the whole camp is sort of set out is that we've got a rectangle of rooms and a kitchen, and then like a middle courtyard, a big open courtyard. And if the lions were to come into that and perhaps you were getting up to use the facilities at night, you'd find yourself in a lot of trouble, because those animals would find themselves sort of quite confined and they'd feel trapped and a bit claustrophobic. So that wouldn't be good. And lions also not scared. The big cats, maybe even Cheetah I've seen walking through narrow corridors. Let's actually follow this boy as he moves along. So I'm gonna head there. Because we will stay with him. So Miles, no, they haven't directly been in camp. We have a Janet that's harassing us at the moment in camp. I have seen many lions on foot at night in the lodges. And we had the Charleston males kill a kudu outside room number 4 at Earth Lodge. And we actually discovered them. We were down at the dam looking at hippos. And Eve, one of the other female rangers, looked back up. And she'd seen these male lions sitting on the roof of this luxury suite. And they came down off of the roof. We discovered that they killed a kudu right outside the room. Luckily, it wasn't occupied. It was empty. They then used the plunge pool at Earth Lodge as their personal watering hole, and also were laying on the nice cold floor. So they stayed around there for a few days. But yes, I've bumped into entire prides of lions. I bumped into the whole southern pride, walking guests back to their rooms late at night, and then coming back on my own, bumped into the Charleston males. And I've seen the Charleston pride, which is an adult lioness, 2 sub-adults, and then there's a juvenile male that's about 4 years old or so that sort of follows them around too. So most guides have had many encounters at night with lions on the pathways. Like I said, they're not afraid to come around human habitation. They're always coming to investigate. Not that they're coming to look for you to eat you or anything along those lines. It's just that they'll pass through, they'll drink from the swimming pools. I'm sure there's lots of strange scents and smells. And touch wood, I actually haven't ever had a bad encounter of lions on the pathway before, which has been pleasant. I'm quite thankful for that. We've had interesting elephant encounters on pathways. So I'm so happy that these... Oh, here we go. Hang on, let me reposition quickly, Craig. This looks like Nana. Let's see if it is. But both boys are up now. Let's have a close look on his face. He should have, on the top of his nostrils, 2 lines. Yes, Nana! My favorite Birmingham. Hello, beautiful. He's a gorgeous lion. They are looking a bit shaggy though. They do look like they could eat. Not particularly full bellies. And here comes the scarred Mfumo. He always seems to be in the wharves, this boy. Ever since I've known him, I've never known him to have a clear face. Always a swollen muzzle and cuts under his eyes. And remember, he had that big gaping hole from the maggots that had unfortunately got inside of his face, the myiasis. But he's a real grisly looking lion. This is cool. Okay, let's reposition once more. I'm so glad at least we got them up and doing a little bit. You know, there's honestly nothing worse than lions sleeping, and then to have lions sleeping in the very long grass makes it even more difficult to spot them. But now that they've all cuddled up quite nicely, this is perfect, this is wonderful. And I'm glad I've got to see my Nana again. Now Lyra, you're wondering who Now, settle, boys. Drama queens, sit over here. It's okay. Nena's always a little bit more nervous. I don't know why with the vehicles. Every time you start and stop, he's the only one that lifts his head up and sort of looks at you. We will just give him a bit of room. But he's also the most beautiful, in my opinion, out of the 4 Birminghams. So sorry, Lyra, you were wondering who names these lions. So typically, the male coalitions of lions, or even if it's just one male lion that's left an area on his own, they'll get their names from the farm that they've come from. So a lot of these big wilderness areas used to be made up of smaller farms that people would own. So for instance, Lisbon, the Toulon property, the Birmingham farm, which is up in the Timbavati, and that's where these boys have come from. So typically they'll take on the name of the farm, where they're from, and then what we've done now with the Birminghams as well is we've given them each an individual name. So like I said, we've got Mfumo, Tenyo, and Nena over here. And just because they're so different from each other, I think that they are definitely deserving of their own names. They used to be numbered 1 to 4. But I think that, which is good, it's a great way to start off. But I'm very happy that these boys have now got their own names. But this is very cool. I'm so happy to see them again. And they probably are just going to rest now. I think that they've been moving around quite a bit. I didn't hear lions last night, but Craig said he heard them calling. So they must have come from somewhere. Or they joined up. Hang on. Let me just think about this for a moment. This was about a week ago. Or maybe even less than a week ago. I think they had 3 Birmingham boys in Little Gowrie. So perhaps they've still just been together. But every now and then I see sets of 2 walking up and down the roads, and then, you know, not too far away you'll find another set, which is, I think, it can be a great strategy as to what these Birminghams do, but it also can be a not so great strategy. But by splitting up the coalition like they often do, they're obviously able to occupy more land, more territories. The only thing is that when big coalitions come in, other males come in to potentially investigate and see if there's a spot that they can take over. If you've got Nena, who normally lives within Suku, down on the northeastern corner of the Sabi Sand, you'll find that he's not going to be able to take on 4 male lions, but if they're all together, they can definitely take on another coalition quite easily. So it's a tough thing, but they seem to make it work. You often see him, I think Mfumo gets a hiding, whether it's from his brothers or not, I'm not sure. We don't often get to see the fights, but we have seen Tinyo and Mfumo fighting before. Brent had an incredible sighting, the 2 of them arguing over females. But they're not going anywhere, and neither are we. We're going to sit here for a little bit longer with these boys, and I'm going to send you across to James, who has found himself a reptile.
We found a plated lizard, everybody. I'm just trying to decide what I think it is. Whether it is a rough-scaled plated lizard or a giant plated lizard. I think it's a rough-scaled plated lizard, but it might be a giant-scaled plated lizard. Giant-scaled. Giant? Rough-scaled plated lizard or giant plated lizard. Either way, it's a rather magnificent fellow, and he's sunning himself as the sun starts to warm the air now, sitting as he is on his termite mound, where he lives. He's quite a magnificent fellow. There's not much else to say about him, really, other than he's probably fairly omnivorous, I think. In fact, I seem to be surprised. I seem to remember being surprised by what they ate. Pradeep, you're just wondering what I think the oldest living animal in the park is. well, in the entire Kruger National Park, I suspect quite strongly that the oldest living animal here would be one of the leopard tortoises. Yeah, they eat insects, flowers and soft fruit, that's right. So I would suggest one of the leopard tortoises, so also a reptile, and some of them apparently can live for over 100 years. So I think almost certainly one of the tortoises, or one of the crocodiles. Crocodile or leopard tortoise, both of which are capable of living in excess of 100 years. Mammals, of course, there's no competition. It's us. But, of course, naturally occurring mammals in this area, we would have elephants as the most long-lived. They'll live for 65 years, as we discussed a little bit earlier. And then what else would there be? Long-lived birds. The longest-lived birds, I think the parrots probably live quite a long time. I know African grey parrots, which obviously we don't get here, live for more than 40 years. And I think some of the raptors you'll find will live for that length of time too. Thank you, Pradeep. That's a nice question. My book's away. We seem to have some communications back. We're heading out of Cheetah Plains now. It became almost impossible to operate in there without comms, and the cheetahs weren't there, so we thought, let's just go home. Closer to home, certainly. So nice to have those male lions again today. And with any luck they'll be around for a while. Now, of course, the most difficult part of leaving Cheetah Plains at this time of the day is when you go past the lodge. The smell of cooking breakfast that wafts over one's nostrils almost results in you inexorably swinging the wheel to the left so that you can pull into the lodge for a picnic on your way home. We'll try not to do that. We'll do one more turn past 3 in a row pan. And while we do that, I believe Stefan has got some interesting footprints on the road to show you.
We have got some interesting footprints at least. We've got what seems to be a hybrid that has been created in the Sabi Sands just from the tracks. I'm going to circle the track here so that you can, if you do take a screenshot, you have some reference as to what it is. But here we have a hyena track. It is the, let me just put that there for scale. So we've got the front foot, which is much bigger, of the hyena track, the obvious half moon toe and the slanted back pad. And then here's the back foot. And look at that third lobe. That is atypical. Can you see that third lobe? So let me take my finger away and you take yourselves a screenshot. Track. The substrate and this particular hyena has got maybe an injury on his foot or perhaps a little growth on his foot, but it's given it that characteristic third lobe that we so often confuse with, well, so often use as a diagnostic feature of a leopard track, even though you can see the clear half moon toe. But what gives it away, and of course when you're doing tracking, what you want to try and do is use as many markers as you can. So in this particular case, even though it seems to be a leopard track, what you want to try and do is look for those markers. So you've got that half moon toe there, but if you take a stick and you put it across the back of the pad, and then you take another stick and you put it in the direction of the travel, you'll notice that very distinct angle, and that coupled with the half moon toe makes it a hyena track and not a leopard or a lion. But isn't that interesting that you've got that third lobe there? So just take yourselves a picture. That is a weird and wonderful leopard excuse me, I mean we're getting confused. Hyena track. Definitely not the easiest one to diagnose unless you just follow the way of doing it. Now, we're walking back down the road now, mainly because we're quite far away from camp. But also because this time of the year the grass is just so thick that without a game path or without a road to walk on, walking becomes very difficult in actual fact. And just have a look at this grass cover that you can see next to the road. This is, I'm just trying to think of now the road. It's Gari Cutline. And Gari Cutline is used as a fire break. And so you can see, if you look down the road, you can see that the road is placed in the middle of the fire break. The bush is cleared from time to time. It will be cleared this year. From time to time in a stripe, probably about 50 yards wide. And the reason for that is that if there was to be a bushfire coming from either side, you would use this road where you put your backburn in. Now, a backburn is a fire that is burnt let me just think, into the wind. So in other words, if a fire was coming this way, uncontrolled, you'd come to this road, you'd put a fire in here, and it would burn into the wind that way. And you'd stand here with a guari stick like this, you'd light the fire, it would burn in, and then you'd put the fire out. And you'd let the controlled fire burn to the wildfire, and that would put the wildfire out. And this is one of those roads that we use. This is a fire break, Gari Cutline, and you can see how it's being cleared of brush. Last year, of course, there was no grass cover, meaningful grass cover, and so this road wasn't cleared. I think the drought did it for us. It was just sand here a couple of months ago. And yeah, you can see how well the grass is recovered here. This definitely, this year we definitely are at more risk of fires. I think now coming June, July, August, our fire months. Now, Jacqueline, you were saying, do we intervene when we have bushfires here? Jacqueline, yes, but only to protect property. So we will only stop a wildfire here if it's burning towards a camp or towards a lodge. The Sabi Sands is dotted full of camps and lodges, and so generally wildfires that come in from the Kruger National Park or start in the middle of the block for whatever reason are controlled to a point. In the Kruger National Park, pretty much wildfires are left to burn, and I'm not joking to you here when I've seen a wildfire burn for 3 weeks in the Kruger National Park, burning many times the size of the entire Sabi Sands in one go. There's a lot of speculation as to what type of fire control, too little, too much. Do you burn in years that wildfires couldn't reach you because of a tar road or whatever the case may be, a lodge that was in the way? What is the routine that you should burn in, or what's the healthy burn regime for a fire in the park? To be honest with you, no one really knows. It's one of those evolving sciences. New things are tried every year. What you can do though is you can determine the amount of combustible material that you have on your particular where you traverse. You use a machine called a disc pasture meter, which is basically a disc that you put on top of the grass, and you drop the disc, and it compresses the vegetation, and depending on the height that it's compressed, that is they work it out in kilograms per hectare, or per square meter, so kilograms per square meter, and over a certain amount of kilograms of combustible material per square meter, you can even start to set alight living things. And at that point, you need to put a fire in. Actually, you need to put a fire in before that point. Because what will happen then if a wildfire comes through is they'll set living trees alight. And what you don't want is that. Obviously, for commercial lodges, we're not a commercial lodge, but we need the animals to be here. If that had to happen here and the bush had to be completely scorched, the animals would move away and go somewhere else. And with fires that start here as early as June and July, you can imagine that if we only start getting rain in November, it would be catastrophic. We wouldn't be able to show you much that lives here at all until the rains come back and rejuvenate the grass. And so we try and keep on top of fires. Most years we have a fire here. And we do keep on top of things mostly. Last year we had no fires. This year you can expect us to come on afternoon safari looking very tired, red-eyed and smelling like smoke, at least once or twice. Now Laura, you wanted to know where the animals go if they had a fire. Laura, the Kruger National Park is big enough, and it's also bisected by enough rivers that wildfires do not burn the entire surface area of the park every year. And so what will happen when there's a fire is the animals will move away, and when the grass comes back, come straight back. and it can be as little as a couple of hours. I've seen rhinoceros and I've seen leopard literally walking around burning embers a couple of hours after a wildfire has moved through an area. For what reason, I don't know. Leopard may be searching for bits and pieces of food, animals that couldn't get away from the flames. Rhinoceros potentially, I don't know, eating burnt grass for some mineral deficiency. I don't know. Your guess is as good as mine over there. But basically they will move away and will come back as soon as the grass comes away. And it's literally because the park is so big that animals can move to different areas when conditions in any particular area are not that good. Alright, so why don't we end that conversation right there and send you over to Taylor, who's still with those Birminghams.
We are indeed still with them, and they've decided that now it's a good time to sleep, and the day has indeed warmed up a sufficient amount, so I don't blame them for using the shade of the squarry tree. It seems to be a great spot that they've got at the moment. Now I was just thinking about when we used to see the Birminghams quite regularly, as well as the Nguhumas. And in the last few months, I don't think that they've changed too much. I thought that their manes would have gotten much darker. But it seems as though these boys are not going to be proper black maned lions, and that's okay. They've got a bit of darkness coming through, especially around the chest, and there seems to be a streak between the ears. But other than that, their manes are quite sort of blonde and bleached from the sun. But like I said, to have a dark mane doesn't necessarily mean that you're not a dominant male, because clearly these four boys are. Well, I know that Nsuku's not here, but we'll include him as well, is because they sort of roam over quite a massive territory. And I know James was going through the various prides and coalitions and their sort of areas that they move around in. And the Birminghams, they do quite a big property. I mean, they do the whole of Djuma, they do Arathusa, they do Cheetah Plains, they do Little Gowrie, Annette's, Hoffman's, Chitwa, Torchwood, Nkoro. I mean, it's a huge area. It's basically most of this northern area. And I was looking the other day on one of the Panthera documents that we were sent. And it's the most amazing thing, because we receive all this information as to where the various leopards and lions move around in. So every time we see one of these big cats, that data is recorded. And you can see how many times in 1 month, you know, a certain individual or a coalition or a pride were seen and where they were seen. They're all GPS marked. So like, for instance, today, they'll put the sighting in, though they would probably put it in at Sydney's Dam, because that's where they were originally found. And I was looking, and there are very few other lions up top this side, other than occasionally the Matimbas popping through. I don't really know who else would come here. And the Talalas, you know, those young males in the Talala pride. Now, Brian, you've asked if different lion prides will ever go to war against each other. The females can be quite aggressive towards each other too. So if two different prides of lionesses come through, there'll definitely be a big argument and they'll fight about it. But typically the fights are done between the males. The biggest competition comes through when new males move into an area. And like I said, there are lots and lots of young boys out here. For instance, I'm waiting for the Eastern Bank Pride to make their route around here. They're a coalition of 5 male lions, young boys, and they've come from Kruger. And they are venturing in around Kirkman's Camp, around Lion Sands, and even encroaching onto Sabi, so I presume a bit of Mala Mala too. And as you know, we're not too far away from Mala Mala, even though it's a massive property, and they seem to be coming in from the southern sector of the Sand River. It's not to say that they won't move up here, so we're just going to have to wait and see. But if a big coalition of males comes through, and again, if they're all separated, if the one Birmingham is here, another Birmingham is here, and the other one's in the far east, they'll come through and they have no problem. They will kill one Birmingham on their own, and eventually they'll get taken out one by one. Sort of what happened with the Mapojos. That type of thing tends to happen if they don't stay together. They run the risk of younger males and more of them coming in and completely snatching up their territory right underneath them. But let's hope that that doesn't happen, and I think we will be okay for a couple of years, because these boys have really just come into reign now, and I think that they've still got a bit of time to go. But again, you never know what might happen. Somebody could come in from the northern Kruger, from the Manuleti, and push through. Now, we've been chatting a lot about various lions, and Alyssa, you've asked if we get white lions around here. Not quite here, but to say it's not impossible, but there's a pride of lions called the Shish Pride, which occurs around Satara, and specifically around the S100, if any of you know Kruger. And they've got a couple of lions in there. And then I think there's a pride called the Mountain Pride, which is towards the Lobombo Mountains. They also have a couple of young white lions. So they do occur. And even from here, Satara is not that far, especially for male lions to move around in. And for any of these animals, really, they can travel a massive distance in such a short space of time. So you never quite know, like I said, what's going to happen. We obviously can just keep tabs of various prides and coalitions of lions that are moving around in the areas, and try and follow them and see where they're sort of going to pop out again. But one night we could just there could be a whole lot of commotion. Like I say, there could be new boys on the block that could come through and wipe the Birminghams out. They're not particularly big lions either in terms of body size. The Charleston male lions are much larger than these two, and even there was a lion named, he was called the Kruger National Park male, the KMP boy. He lived on his own. He actually at one point was the dominant male lion down in the southern sands around Sabi, and then there was another boy called Solo. It was also a beautiful big male lion, and the two of them actually ended up joining forces quite late in life, which is quite interesting. But that's what's so fun about the dynamics of the animals out here, is that we can only read so much, but depending on the area and the circumstances, their behavior changes to suit their surroundings. These boys are not going to go anywhere. I'm hoping that they'll stay here for this afternoon. I'm going to try and go and find some elephants now. I heard some trumpets a moment ago, but I'm going to send you across to James, who has got an antelope that these lions might like to eat.
They would like to eat them, I've no doubt. The Kudu, possibly one of the world's most beautiful antelope, walking gently across the plains here as we make our way back onto Djuma. And in fact they keep coming, these kudu. They're a gift that keeps on giving. Do you see that, David? There are further numbers of them coming across the road. Very nice. Sarah, one of the main differences between antelope and deer are the fact that their horns do not fall off. So unlike antlers, which are what deer have, they are attached to the skull. The horns are part of the skull, whereas antlers are not. Little oxpecker there taking a ride. The sun's come out, the light is gorgeous. This is a very beautiful kudu sighting. I must say, all around there is a feeling of abundance and life because of this grass and green vegetation. Now, Wild Bill, you've asked a question about ruminants and whether they always chew in the same orbital direction. In other words, do their mouths always go from left to right or right to left? Wild Bill, I'm willing to bet that nobody's ever bothered to research that. I don't know. When I've watched, in each chewing bout, yes, well then they do. But when the next piece comes up, do they keep chewing the same way? I imagine they probably do. It probably becomes a habit. But I couldn't tell you for sure if ruminants always chew in the same orbital direction or not. I'll try and find out. We'll have a look. Next time, giraffes are the best one to watch because we can see the bolus coming up. Whether that changes from day to day. I don't know. I mean, maybe they sometimes chew left to right, and then on Wednesdays they chew, right to left, and Thursdays left to right again. Who knows? Maybe it's a weekly thing. Lara, you're wondering about a kudu's height and how tall it is at the shoulder. It's about 5 feet. A kudu's about 5 feet at the top. About take me up to my chin or so, plus minus. So they are pretty tall, and they weigh, a big male will weigh up to 250, 270 kilograms, so you can multiply that by 2.2, and you get, well, in the region of 500 to 540 pounds for a big bull kudu, and the female's about 100 kilograms less, so about 200 pounds less than that. So they're still vast creatures. And I'm interested that they don't get eaten more by lions here. They do at this time of the year more than other times of the year, but they don't get savaged nearly as much as buffalo do, for example, and I imagine they're probably a lot easier to kill. Perhaps just because there are not as many of them. Well, they're easier to kill once you can catch them. They are obviously very fast and very agile through the trees. Okay, we're going to go through a bad signal area, I think, here. Have a quick look for Karula and the cubs, and while we do that, Stef would like to tell you something about being on foot.
Every now and again, thank you, yeah, I would like to tell you about being on foot, that it's nice for me. And every now and again, you come across something like this, which is quite nice to look at. Now, I'll say why. This is a very old, very well used rhino midden. Now from where you are sitting to where I'm standing is probably about 5 yards or so, and it is 2.5 yards thick and probably about 1 yard deep. And this is a rhino midden, a rhinoceros midden. Now over the years, and as the poaching has increased with the rhino, I've noticed a decline not only in the number of rhino middens but also in their size, and it's because not as many rhino are using a communal latrine, and so not adding as much dung to it, and also there's not as many rhino, so the rhino in an area are being eradicated, and the rhino midden itself is becoming spread out and basically disappears. But this is one of the biggest ones that I've ever seen in this area recently, and it's just nice to see. All the soil that you're looking at over here is literally soil that's been brought up from under the ground by the excavations of dung beetles. It has some fresh dung in it, it has some old dung in it. It's not as active as what I'd like it to be, but nevertheless it is an active rhino midden. Now for those of you who've just been joining the show recently, and wouldn't know that rhinos have middens. A lot of animals have middens. Rhino in particular have middens, and they use it as a type of signpost for their territories. So when in an area, in particular a male rhino would come into this area, he would then scent mark coming into this area, he'd scent mark all over the place, he'd then come to a latrine, a toilet, he'd then drop off a load of dung, he'd kick it with his feet. He then gets his particular smell all over his feet, and when he walks around throughout his territory, he leaves smelly footprints, at least to other rhino, smelly footprints all over his territory, which tell other rhino, this is my patch. And so they'll have a couple of these latrines dotted around their territory. Rhino are territorial. Male rhino are very territorial. Female rhino not so territorial. They have home ranges. So female rhino can wander from one male rhino's territory to another, although they won't walk from here to, say, another country. They will be stuck in a geographical range, even though the boundaries of that range are slightly fluid, but they'd stay in a geographical range for their whole lives, which is around about 45 years. 35 to 45 years is what a rhinoceros lives for. It's a very long-lived animal, comparatively speaking. I know there was a question a little bit earlier to James about what is the oldest animal that lives in this area. I don't quite know what animal James picked to answer that question with, but the fact is, James said a leopard tortoise or a crocodile. Let me see, I'd probably agree with James on that one. Leopard tortoise or crocodile, they live for double the age of a rhinoceros, and so very old. But a rhino at 45 years old is definitely one of the oldest living animals, or animals with the longest lifespan out here, at least anyway. It's just nice to see this type of thing, and something that at least we get to celebrate and talk about from time to time. All right, we are heading back to camp for breakfast. The temperature has increased significantly from this morning, although I must be honest, the cloud cover looks like it's burning off. We've all got to hold thumbs that we get some more rain. And we're approaching the end of March. We're approaching the end of our deep summer. The 1st of April I call the first day of autumn. And it's about 75 degrees at the moment, so relatively hot. The sun is quite intense. Being the middle of summer, the sun is still prickly on the skin, and days here would quite easily still top 100 right into the middle of April. But from about mid-April to mid-May, we can expect the last rains to fall here, the last big rains or significant rains to fall here. We'll get rain throughout the year, but our significant rains are coming to an end. We'll get 1 or 2 more showers towards the middle of May, like I said, and then there's also some rain associated to cold fronts that come over, especially if we start getting some hardcore cold fronts. Last year we hardly had a winter, as we did the year before. There was hardly a day here where we needed to put on a jacket or anything when we weren't driving around here in winter in a cold morning. You definitely need jackets. So we can get some more rain here, but we need some more. So these clouds must come thicker, and let's see what it is. Have a look there. Tormented zombie owl. That is an incredible name. You wanted to know what I've got on my shoes. These are just literally covers for my socks that keep grass seeds, those grass seeds that you see over there, from entering my shoes and trying their best to saw my feet off. So these covers prohibit grass seeds and other detritus from falling in there and creating rubbing spots on my foot and sticking in my socks and creating blades that want to chop your foot off. So I use them instead of boots that come up to your ankle, because the smaller shoes are lighter, of course, and not as hot on your feet. And with the addition of these canvas sock protectors, do exactly the same thing. They don't give you as much ankle support, but you know, I suppose you can't have everything out of one shoe that you want. These shoes are pretty hardcore, I must be honest with you. This is the 3rd pair I've owned in 2 years. So I still walk them broken in about 9 months or so, which is the average for me in a pair of shoes. And they're lovely. You can step on almost anything, and I've only had one thorn, the thorn of a green thorn, go through. In all the many hours of walking I've done here, only one thorn has managed to stick itself up into my shoe. Now, there are some buffalo around where we are. So for those of you who keep an eye on the Djuma Dam cams throughout the day, with it being pretty hot today, just keep an eye on those dam cameras. I think you might be lucky to see some buffalo that'll come down to lie in the water. We haven't had buffalo lying in the water at Woyatelapan for some time. But coming across this hill are the tracks of 2 buffalo bulls, 2 big guys. So if they don't get sidetracked and go and lie in another pan somewhere, you're more than likely to see them come out on those dam cameras. All right, we're going to cross the dam wall now, which means our signal will disappear, and so we're going to send you over to Taylor, who's got a bird to show you.
We had it. We had one of the last African cuckoos that we'll probably see for the season, because they're going to be heading home soon. It was a beautiful African cuckoo. Maybe we can see if we can, I don't know if we'll find another one again. They don't normally hang around for very long, and it's also not very common to actually get a cuckoo on screen. So that was very cool though. But yeah, so sadly we're not hearing the cuckoos calling so much anymore. I've just been hearing the Jacobins and Levalence cuckoos still shouting about every now and then. And the common cuckoo, they arrived, and I think we started first seeing them in as early as August. I started seeing them down south, so September, August. But now everybody goes back home, and they're intra-African migrants, so they don't go too far. They just head to the northern parts of Africa, and then they'll be back again. But we've got the McCurdy-hurdy. Hi guys. I thought we'd better see if we can say hello to them, because I haven't seen them for a while, and I'm worried that they've forgotten who I am. But still as relaxed as ever, one of the young foals having a little snooze in the shade of all the silver cluster leaves. And I think that this is where they will stay for most of the day. Perhaps the others will sit down as well. Isn't that cool? Well, I'm so glad that we got to see the McCurdy-hurdy. Wasn't that wonderful? But I'm going to say goodbye to all of you from my Craig and self. It's wonderful out here. And for the last final minutes of the show, we're going to go across to Mr. Henry, who will see you all off.
Apparently we've got a raptor in a dead tree. Oh, well spotted, David. It's Mrs. Wahlberg, or Mr. Wahlberg. The unsuccessful breeding pair that lives just near to where we live. Bad luck, old chum or old girl. Hopefully better luck next year. You'll be thinking about your trip north now, I suppose. Sorry, just had to kill a fly there that was biting me. They really are spectacularly pale form Wahlberg's eagle. And I'm confused as to why this bunch haven't managed to raise a youngster in the last 2 years. Last year, obviously, we blamed everything on the drought. It's difficult to blame the drought for their lack of success this year. Although when they arrived it was still very, very dry. So maybe, during that breeding time it was just too dry and there wasn't enough for them to eat. Gorgeous, gorgeous bird. You can hear the grey go-away birds telling it to quack, quack, quack. There they go. Alright everyone, that's going to be it from us today. Thank you, David, for your efforts.
Thank you,
Big thank you to the final control, the ladies there, and to Taylor, of course, for managing to get Rusty going. Stef on foot, of course, Batman, the silent cameraman, and indeed, who was filming Stef today?
It must have been Liam.
Must have been Vumpy, and Vumpy out with Stef. So, until this afternoon at 1600 hours, I hope that you all enjoy your St. Patrick's Day. Shellachy, bulky, stick out all your horns, all the ladies are coming to see us.